Alrighty guys, welcome back to another PS4 tutorial. So, I'm not done with PS Zeta yet. I wanted to do another kind of follow-up video on this, which is the Linux operating system for the PS4. It's been built from the ground up to work with the PS4. It's got all custom drivers for, Wi-Fi and GPU hardware acceleration, Bluetooth support, all that stuff is built in. Plus it's got a bunch of emulators and Steam built into the operating system as well. So I've already done a full setup guide on this. I'll link it on screen and in the description. But I wanted to cover a few more things on it. Some things that I didn't mention before, some problems, how to resolve some issues, and also testing a few other things like installing additional programs and additional emulators on here, because of course it is a computer operating system, so you don't just have the stuff that's pre-built in here, but you can also install additional programs. So first of all, I did say in the initial video that with Steam you could only play games that are supported on Linux, and that is not strictly true. I forgot about Steam Play. So Steam Play, if you're unaware, it's basically a method of running Windows games on Steam on Linux basically. So even if you are on a Linux-based operating system, you can run your all of your games essentially through Steam Play. It basically kind of emulates a Windows environment and launches it in that, but there's no kind of delay. It's not like running it through VirtualBox or anything like that. So if you want to go ahead and enable it, you basically have to go up to Steam and go to Settings, and then you head down to Account, Beta Participation, select Change. It will be on None by default. You want to change it to Steam Beta Update and click OK. Then click OK here. Once you do that, it will ask you to restart Steam. It will do an update. When it reboots, you go back into Steam, back into Settings. You'll now have a Steam Play option down here, and you just want to check this box to enable Steam Play for all other titles, and Proton, for the latest version of Proton's the one you want to select, and you click OK. Again, it will probably ask you to restart again, and then once you've restarted, you'll see that all your games on your account will be accessible, and you can go ahead and run them. So I installed Doom and tested this on Steam Play. It actually did crash when I tried to launch it through Steam Native. So if you look on Linux here, there's Steam Native and Steam Runtime. So if a game doesn't work on Steam Native, then try Runtime. If it doesn't work on Runtime, try Native. So I tried it with Runtime and the game launched. It worked because Doom, of course, is an OpenGL title, and there's OpenGL support built into the GPU, like GPU hardware acceleration works for OpenGL. I think that's why DirectX games don't tend to work at all, or they're super slow and laggy. But if you can find a game that uses Vulkan or OpenGL, then you have a good chance of running it on the PS4. So I ran Doom. As you can see, the game runs. It's not perfect. It's running at it was running at kind of 30-ish FPS on kind of medium settings, turning things down to 1600 by 900 resolution and low settings. I'm able to get a sort of get it into the 40s. If I put it down to 720p, I can get it into sort of the 50 kind of range. Doesn't run great, but it does run. I've seen other people run games like Shadow of the Tomb Raider or Rise of the Tomb Raider, whichever the first one was. I saw them running it pretty well, it seemed, and I think that's another Vulkan title. So yeah, check for games that support Vulkan or OpenGL, and you'll find that those games tend to run okay through Proton on Steam generally. So that's one thing you can do. I also seen a few people in the comments asking how well does the Dolphin emulator run. So I've already tried it. As you can see here on Mario Kart Wii, it runs pretty well. There's a big kind of freeze almost for about 10 seconds before the race starts as the camera's panning around the track, but then once it actually gets into the game, it runs absolutely fine. So again, GameCube games should run fine though, because they're less demanding. Wii games should run fine, maybe the occasional hiccup here and there, but generally it runs pretty well. So that's the Dolphin emulator. So people were also asking about PlayStation 2 emulation. Now bear in mind there is a PS2 emulator built into the PS4 by default. If you've jailbroken your console, then you can you can run PS2 games anyway. I've already got a video on that, but not all PS2 games are supported with that built-in emulation. whereas if you installed a PS2 emulator on this, on Psxita, it should have a higher compatibility. You should be able to run more games. So I installed PCSX2, and I'll show you guys how to install that after I've gone over this stuff. So I tried running Crash Nitro Kart, which is a fairly demanding PS2 game, and it ran pretty poorly. I mean, 20 FPS on average, basically runs in slow motion, so not the best. However, less demanding PlayStation 2 games are definitely playable. I did try Yu-Gi-Oh! Capsule Monster Colosseum, which is a much less demanding PS2 game graphically, and it ran fairly well. I mean, 40-ish FPS, and it was definitely playable. So yeah, some PS2 games will work. More demanding PS2 games, you're likely to be playing the game in slow motion, which is not ideal. So moving on. I also tried cemu, which was also requested in the comments. I managed to get Mario Kart 8 running, and again, pretty much the same as Crash Nitro Kart. I don't know if it's all these racing games, but it also, you know, in the menus it was running fine, but once you got into the game it started running in basically slow motion. It was actually running better than Crash Nitro Kart on the PS2 emulator, but still running in slow motion, as you can tell from the footage, so not ideal either. Again, maybe less demanding Wii U games will probably run okay. So yeah, that's basically everything I've tried so far, and I'm going to show you guys how to install it. People have also requested Kodi as well, if you can install Kodi. You can install Kodi and turn, you know, the system into a, you know, like a media streaming PC. That is possible. I'll show you guys how to do that as well. But first of all, to go over a couple of problems people were having in the previous video. People on PS4 Pros were reporting an issue where they kept black screening after they launched the payload. Now, one of the reasons for this could be that your PS4, because it's a PS4 Pro, you might be outputting in 4K, and apparently that causes issues. So if you go into your video settings on your PS4 Pro and you change the video output down to 1080p instead of 4K, and then launch the payload, that might fix your issue and you might get the white text and everything working. But yeah, it's just a display issue. That might not be the issue with all PS4 Pros. Some models might not be supported, but give that a try and see if that fixes your issue if you're on a PS4 Pro. Also, people kept thinking that you have to use a USB stick. You don't have to use a USB stick. It just has to be some kind of USB storage device. You can use an external hard drive. Right now I'm actually using an SSD that I've hooked up to my PS4 through a SATA data and SATA power to USB 3 adapter. As long as you use like a USB 3 USB stick, then the transfer speeds should be acceptable. In my first video I was using a USB 2 USB stick, which was awful, but now that I'm using an SSD, my transfer speeds and everything else are much better, so that's something you can try as well to improve things. And another problem people are reporting is when they boot up the operating system and they first click on the little start menu thing here, they're reporting that most of this stuff isn't here, like there's no accessories, no games, no multimedia network settings, all of that stuff's gone. So if that's your problem, you just have to go into this JWM config and click the button to refresh a menu, and you might have to do that 2 or 3 times, but after a while, if you keep doing it, you should eventually get all of this stuff showing up. So if that's your issue, then that is how to solve that one. So moving on, let's look at how to actually install stuff. So if you're wanting to install anything, we're going to install PCSX2, we're going to install Kodi, we're going to install cemu. So if you want to install anything, and you should probably do this whenever you boot up the system, is check for updates. The way you check for updates is you open up the terminal, which again is right here, the first one. So you type in sudo pacman -s, uppercase S, and then lowercase yu, and press enter, and that will check for updates. And hopefully there's not many for me. Okay, there's a few. Now if you're doing this for the first time, pretty much every library is going to have to be updated, so it's going to take a while. But as you can see, I've already done it before yesterday, so it only had a couple of things to update and then we're good. So once you've done the updates, you can then install whatever you want. So let's install Kodi, for example. So sudo pacman -s space Kodi, and that will install Kodi. Simple as that. Okay, here we go, installing Kodi. and done. Kodi is installed. So now if I click up here, we go to multimedia, Kodi is now in here. Now, after you install something, or even after you do the updates, you might have the problem where none of your stuff is showing up. So again, you'll have to go to JWM config and refresh the menu a few times until you have, you know, games, graphics, multimedia, all that stuff showing up again. But let's run Kodi just to show that it works. I'm not going to go ahead and install anything, but there you go, 18.1, Kodi is running. See how quickly that opened because I'm on an SSD. If I was on my USB 2, I'd probably be waiting about 5 minutes for it to boot up. But there you go, it runs absolutely fine. So you could go ahead and install something, like, you know, you could head to settings and go to file manager, add a source. So you add your sources and then just play whatever you want. So yeah, Kodi, you can install it, turn your system into a media streaming PC. Okay, so let's install the PS2 emulator now. So that's sudo pacman -s and then PCSX2, I believe. So we can install that and run our PS2 games. Alright, there we go, installed. So now if I go up here again and go to games, we now have PCSX2. So I can open that up. So system default, next. Then we need, make sure this is set to GSDX. And then we can configure it and make sure OpenGL hardware is selected. Not really going to bother with audio or anything else at the moment. So we'll just do next. And then we need a BIOS for the PlayStation 2. First of all, we need to head to the location. So it's in home, psxita.config, psx2 BIOS. So I'll just open up another one and go to that location. So home folder, psxita. So .config's not in here, so I'll have to search for it this way. /, and then we've got psx2 BIOS, and then the BIOS has to go in here. So we'll copy the BIOS into this folder and then extract it. There we go. See how much faster everything is with an SSD, it's great. Okay, so that's the BIOSes. So if I refresh list now, all the BIOSes show up. And I'll just select this one, finish, and there we go. PCSX2 is up and running. So if we go into config, we'll go into video, or sorry, controller settings. We need to adjust our controller. So make sure you select, if you're wanting to use the PS4 controller, make sure you select mouse and Sony Computer Entertainment wireless controller, not the one that says motion sensor. Just select the middle one, because the motion sensor that screws everything up, at least in my experience. So, and then you just adjust all the buttons on the controller. That'll do. Okay, so we'll apply that. Click OK, and now we can basically run our game. So if we go to ISO selector and find my downloads page, which is somewhere, home, downloads, and then we'll try Yu-Gi-Oh! Capsule Monster Coliseum, and then I just have to boot full. So yes, sure, we can use save. Then I can just double tap on the controller to get it into full screen, and the game runs. So there you go. PS2 game running on the PS4 through PCSX2. Alright, so after that, if we move on, let's try cemu. So cemu is of course the Wii U emulator. This requires a bit more setup because I don't believe there's a cemu package built in here. So I guess I'll have to just download it manually here through the browser. So cemu emulator, of course it is Windows, but you can run it through Wine. Wine is built in. So we'll go ahead and save to the downloads folder. Okay, so I already have stuff built in here. So if I extract cemu here, I already have the cemu hook. So if I put cemu hook in here and extract it into this folder, then we've got the hook, and then we also need a shader cache. So I'm going to run Mario Kart 8. So So I've got shader cache here. So go into cemu, go into shader cache, transferable. We'll copy our shader cache in there. And then, I think that's pretty much all we have to do, right? I think so. Yeah, so now just run cemu. And then Wine is probably going to have to download some compatibility stuff. Yep, here we go. Hey, there we go. Okay, now it boots up. A bit glitched, but I mean, that's to be expected when you're running things through Wine. Now I'm just going to run this on default settings. I should have mentioned when I was running all of this stuff before that when I showed you, I didn't really change any settings. I think I changed this to low fast to try and speed things up a bit. But other than that, I didn't really change anything. So if we go to input settings, then we can change this to Wii U gamepad, X input. I thought it was X input, but X input's not showing anything. But if I do direct input, then it's like, oh hey, you've got a Sony computer wireless controller. Okay, we'll just go with that then. Okay, right click, up, down, left, right, then up, down, left, right on D-pad, below mic, show screen. No idea what that is, but we'll just leave it. Profile name, let's call it PS4. Save. And then hopefully that will work. Let's try and load Mario Kart 8, which is located in here. So code, got to run the RPX file for your games. And then hopefully that will run. There you go, Mario Kart 8 running. Although it didn't load my shader cache, which is why it's running so glitchy right now, I'm assuming. Yeah, that's running really slowly. Let's just see if the controller input works. Yeah, it does. Okay, great. I'm going to close out of that though, because the shader cache is... Yeah, that's a new one that it's created. I need it to use this shader cache, so I'm going to rename this one and give it the same name as this one. Or give this the same name, I mean. Okay, so then that should get it running a bit smoother, hopefully. Okay, there we go. Now it's compiling the shaders. So, yeah, once it gets finished compiling all these shaders, then we should hopefully get the game running a bit smoother. Alright, here we go. So, just about compiled all the shaders now. That's it. So now the game should run a bit smoother here. Alright, there we go. That's much smoother. So you can do single player, Grand Prix, 50cc. Yep, runs fine now. So obviously once you get into a game it slows down again. It runs in basically slow-mo, but hey, at least you don't have any more stuttering now that we have a shader cache loaded. So yeah. Anyway, point is it works and you can run Nintendo Wii U games on your PS4. So yeah, anyway, I just wanted to show you guys how to do a lot more with this, how to install additional programs, and you know, also cover some of the issues that people were having, address some of the comments. A few people were also commenting like, why would you even do this, because you're turning your perfectly good working PS4 into a really low-end PC that can barely run PC games, can hardly run games at 60 FPS. That's not what this is, okay? You're not replacing the PS4's functionality with this operating system. You're not overwriting the PS4. You can just click here, return to Orbis OS, and it will boot you back into the normal PS4's operating system. Whenever you want to go back into Linux again, then you just have to load the Linux loader and it will boot you back in here. It's just another operating system you can run basically alongside your PS4's operating system, which offers more functionality. So you can still run all your PS4 games on the PS4 normally, and then, you know, you can also boot into Linux and, you know, use a proper web browser or run Kodi, turn it into a streaming PC, run emulators, run some PC games. It just gives you more functionality, and I don't see why there's anything wrong with that. So yeah, anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video or found the information useful. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe, and I'll hopefully see you guys in the next video.